Dr. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her glasses for the third time in 10 minutes as she stared at the computer screen displaying astronomical data that shouldn't exist. The readings from the Palomar Observatory showed a massive celestial object approaching the outer reaches of the solar system. Its trajectory calculated to bring it dangerously close to Earth within the next 18 months. What made her hands tremble wasn't just the size of the object, roughly 4 times the mass of Earth, but the fact that all official records of its approach had been systematically deleted from every major astronomical database worldwide. Elena had been working as a senior astronomer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for 15 years, long enough to recognize when data was being deliberately suppressed. The object, which ancient texts referred to as Nibiru, or Planet X, had been the subject of speculation and conspiracy theories for decades. But what Elena was looking at wasn't speculation. It was hard scientific evidence that the rogue planet was real, and it was coming. The first signs had appeared 6 months ago, when several deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational anomalies in the outer solar system. Initially dismissed as equipment malfunctions, the readings became impossible to ignore when they began affecting the orbits of Neptune and Uranus. Elena had been part of a small team tasked with investigating these anomalies, but their research had been abruptly terminated without explanation. 3 days ago, Elena's colleague, Dr. Marcus Chen, had been found dead in his apartment, supposedly from a heart attack, despite being a healthy 34-year-old marathon runner. His computer had been wiped clean, and all his research notes had disappeared. That's when Elena realized the true scope of what they were dealing with. Not just an approaching celestial catastrophe, but a coordinated effort to keep it hidden from the world. Now, working alone in her home office at 2 a.m., Elena compiled the remaining fragments of data she had managed to save. The mathematical models were terrifying. When Nibiru made its closest approach to Earth, the gravitational effects would be catastrophic. Massive earthquakes, tsunamis, and potentially a complete shift in Earth's rotational axis. The planet as humanity knew it would cease to exist. Elena faced an impossible choice: remain silent and watch billions die unprepared, or risk everything to expose the truth about Nibiru's return. Chapter 2. Ancient Warnings Resurface. Dr. James Harrison had dedicated his career to translating ancient Mesopotamian texts, but the tablet he held in his Oxford laboratory was unlike anything he had encountered before. The cuneiform inscriptions, dating back over 4,000 years, contained precise astronomical calculations that matched modern orbital mechanics with impossible accuracy. According to the translation, the ancient Sumerians had not only known about Nibiru's existence, but had predicted its return cycle with mathematical precision that rivaled contemporary astrophysics. The tablet had been delivered to him anonymously, along with a note that simply read, "They're coming back. The Watchers remember." Harrison's initial skepticism had evaporated as he cross-referenced the astronomical data with current celestial mechanics. The ancient text described a great star of crossing that visited the inner solar system every 3,600 years, bringing with it the reshaping of heavens and earth. Harrison's research revealed that historical records from multiple ancient civilizations, Babylonian, Egyptian, and Mayan, all contained references to a returning celestial body associated with global catastrophes. The biblical flood, the collapse of the Bronze Age, even the extinction events in Earth's geological record seemed to coincide with Nibiru's theoretical orbital periods. The implications were staggering. Humanity's greatest disasters might not have been random acts of nature, but the predictable consequences of a cosmic clockwork that ancient peoples had understood better than modern science. As Harrison delved deeper into the translations, he discovered references to a group called the Watchers, beings who supposedly monitored Earth and warned selected humans of approaching catastrophes. The text suggested that these entities had aided human survival during previous Nibiru passages, helping to preserve civilization through the darkest periods of human history. Harrison's excitement at this archaeological breakthrough quickly turned to concern when he realized the implications. If the ancient calculations were correct, Nibiru's return was imminent. He began reaching out to contacts in the astronomical community, only to discover that several observatories had recently experienced mysterious equipment failures and data losses. When he tried to publish his findings, every academic journal rejected his papers without review, an unprecedented response to his usually respected scholarship. That evening, Harrison received a phone call from an unlisted number. The voice was calm, authoritative, and carried an accent he couldn't place. "Dr. Harrison, you have uncovered something important, but you are in danger. Stop your research immediately, or you will join your colleague in silence." Chapter 3. The Underground Network. Sarah Mitchell had never believed in conspiracy theories until she began investigating the suspicious deaths of astronomers worldwide. As an investigative journalist for The Guardian, she had initially approached the story as a debunking piece, another sensational claim about Planet X that would provide easy content for a slow news week. But as she dug deeper, the pattern of silenced scientists and suppressed research became impossible to ignore. Her investigation began with Dr. Marcus Chen's death, which had been barely mentioned in local news, despite his prestigious position at JPL. Sarah's initial inquiries revealed that Chen had been part of a larger research team studying outer planetary anomalies, and that 3 other team members had either died under suspicious circumstances or simply disappeared. When she tried to contact the surviving researchers, she found that most had suddenly left their positions and could not be reached. Following digital breadcrumbs through academic databases and archived research papers, Sarah discovered a network of scientists who had been quietly documenting evidence of Nibiru's approach for years. These researchers had been systematically discredited, defunded, or worse. Their work had been scrubbed from official channels, but fragments remained in obscure archives and personal blogs that had escaped the digital purge. Sarah's breakthrough came when she received an encrypted message from someone calling themselves Deep Space. The anonymous contact provided her with coordinates to a private forum where surviving researchers shared information away from official oversight. The forum revealed a global network of astronomers, archaeologists, and physicists who had connected the dots between ancient predictions and modern observations. The forum's members painted a terrifying picture of coordinated suppression. Government agencies, international scientific organizations, and private corporations were apparently working together to prevent public knowledge of Nibiru's return. The stated reason, according to leaked internal documents, was preventing global panic that would collapse civilization before the planet's arrival could do it naturally. Through encrypted communications, Sarah learned that some forum members had been approached by a mysterious organization offering substantial payments to cease their research. Those who refused often faced career destruction or worse. The organization seemed to have unlimited resources and influence across multiple governments and institutions. "The truth is," one message from Deep Space read, "they've known about this for decades. The question isn't whether Nibiru is coming, it's whether they plan to save anyone besides themselves." Chapter 4. Government Secrets Unveiled. Colonel Robert Sterling had served in the U.S. Air Force for 23 years, but nothing in his military experience had prepared him for what he discovered in the classified files of Project Deep Shield. As the newly appointed liaison between the Pentagon and NASA's planetary defense initiatives, Sterling had been granted access to materials that revealed the true scope of the government's knowledge about the approaching threat. The classified documents, dating back to the 1980s, showed that major world governments had been tracking Nibiru's approach for decades. The planet had first been detected by the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, IRAS, in 1983, but the discovery had been immediately classified and all public records falsified. Subsequent observations by military satellites and deep space monitoring systems had refined the calculations, confirming the rogue planet's trajectory and impact timeline. Sterling learned that Project Deep Shield had been established in 1995 as a joint initiative between the United States, Russia, China, and several European nations. The project's official mission was developing planetary defense capabilities against asteroid impacts, but its true purpose was preparing for Nibiru's passage. The project encompassed everything from underground bunker construction to genetic seed vaults designed to preserve human civilization through the coming catastrophe. The most disturbing revelation was the selection criteria for survival. Deep Shield's planners had divided humanity into categories of essential and non-essential populations. Scientists, military personnel, government officials, and selected genetic specimens would be preserved in vast underground complexes, while the majority of Earth's population would be left to face the catastrophe unprepared. The ethical justification provided in the documents was coldly pragmatic. Saving everyone was impossible, so resources would be concentrated on preserving the best chance for humanity's survival and eventual recovery. Sterling discovered that similar projects existed worldwide. Russia's Project Noah focused on preserving Russian culture and leadership in Siberian bunkers. China's Mandate of Heaven initiative involved massive underground cities in the Himalayas. The European Union's New Genesis program centered on facilities carved into the Swiss Alps. Each project operated under the same premise: survival of the select few while the masses remained ignorant of their fate. The documents also revealed that the suppression of Nibiru research wasn't just about preventing panic. Knowledge of the planet's return was considered a strategic military advantage. Whichever government could most accurately predict and prepare for the catastrophic effects would emerge as the dominant world power in the post-Nibiru era. As Sterling absorbed the magnitude of the deception, he faced a crisis of conscience that would define the remainder of his career and possibly his life. Chapter 5. The Watchers Emerge. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working late in her home office when the lights began to flicker in an unusual pattern. 3 short flashes, followed by 3 long ones, then 3 short again. SOS. Someone was trying to communicate with her using her own electrical system. As she watched in amazement, her computer screen displayed a message that hadn't been typed by human hands. Dr. Rodriguez, you are not alone in your efforts to warn humanity. Meet us at Griffith Observatory at midnight. Come alone. Elena's rational mind told her this was either an elaborate hoax or evidence that her home security had been completely compromised. But her intuition, honed by years of scientific discovery, suggested something far more extraordinary was occurring. The precision of the electrical manipulation, the timing of the contact, and the knowledge of her research all pointed to capabilities beyond conventional technology. At Griffith Observatory, Elena found herself face to face with individuals who claimed to be part of the group ancient texts called the Watchers. They appeared completely human, but possessed knowledge of celestial mechanics and Earth's history that seemed impossible for any terrestrial organization to possess. Their leader, who identified himself only as Keeper, explained that his people had been monitoring Earth for millennia, periodically intervening to help humanity survive cosmic catastrophes. Your species faces its greatest test since the last ice age, Keeper told him. Nibiru's approach cannot be stopped, but its effects can be mitigated if your governments stop their selfish hoarding of resources and begin proper preparation. The Watchers revealed that they had been subtly guiding human development for thousands of years, ensuring that technological advancement would eventually provide the tools necessary for surviving planetary catastrophes. The development of modern engineering, space technology, and global communications hadn't been purely human achievements, but had been influenced by careful intervention at crucial moments in history. Elena learned that the Watchers represented an ancient civilization that had faced similar cosmic challenges on their own world. They had survived by developing technology that could stabilize planetary systems during gravitational disruptions. This technology could potentially save Earth, but it required global cooperation and resource allocation on a scale that humanity had never achieved. The governments of your world know of our existence, Keeper explained. Some have tried to capture our technology for military advantage. Others have tried to suppress our communications with your scientists. This is why your research has been censored, not just to prevent panic, but to prevent your species from accessing the help it needs to survive. The Watchers presented Elena with a choice: continue working within the system that was suppressing critical information, or join their effort to directly contact humanity and provide the knowledge needed for survival. Chapter 6. Breaking Point. Sarah Mitchell's investigation into the Nibiru cover-up had reached a critical juncture when her encrypted communications with the underground scientist network were suddenly compromised. 3 forum members had been arrested on fabricated charges, and 2 others had disappeared entirely. The pressure was mounting from all sides. Her editors at The Guardian were receiving calls from government officials demanding the story be killed, and Sarah herself had noticed suspicious vehicles following her. The breakthrough came when Dr. James Harrison contacted her through an intermediary with a proposition that would either make her career or end her life. Harrison had decoded additional Sumerian tablets that contained not just warnings about Nibiru's return, but detailed technical specifications for technologies that could potentially mitigate the planetary catastrophe. The ancient knowledge was so advanced that it seemed to originate from a non-human source, the mysterious Watchers referenced in numerous ancient texts. Harrison arranged a clandestine meeting in a London tube station where he transferred copies of his translations along with corroborating evidence from other ancient civilizations. The technologies described in the tablets included methods for generating protective electromagnetic fields around population centers, techniques for stabilizing geological activity during gravitational stress, and even principles for temporary orbital adjustment of planetary bodies. The ancients weren't primitive, Harrison explained as they huddled in an abandoned section of the underground. They had access to knowledge that we've lost. The question is whether we can recover and implement this technology before it's too late. Sarah realized that her story had evolved far beyond a simple investigation of scientific suppression. She was now documenting what could be humanity's last chance for survival. The ancient technologies Harrison had discovered offered hope, but only if the information could be disseminated before the coordinated suppression efforts silenced all remaining voices. That same evening, Sarah received a visit from men identifying themselves as intelligence officers. They offered her a substantial sum to abandon her investigation, and warned of severe consequences if she continued. As they left, one of them turned back with a chilling message. You have 48 hours to decide whether you're part of the solution or part of the problem. Sarah looked at the ancient tablets and technical specifications spread across her apartment and realized that the fate of billions might depend on whether she had the courage to publish what she had learned. Chapter 7. The Secret Facilities. Colonel Sterling's access to Project Deep Shield files had revealed the locations of numerous survival facilities, but seeing them in person confirmed the massive scale of the deception being perpetrated against humanity. The primary U.S. facility, known as Site Alpha, was carved into the granite bedrock beneath the Colorado Rockies, extending more than 2 miles underground and capable of sustaining 50,000 people for up to 20 years. Sterling's official inspection tour of Site Alpha revealed technological capabilities that seemed decades ahead of publicly known science. The facility included fusion power plants, hydroponic food production systems spanning dozens of levels, and manufacturing capabilities that could rebuild civilization from scratch. Medical facilities contained genetic samples from thousands of species, while vast libraries preserved human knowledge in both digital and physical format. What disturbed Sterling most wasn't the advanced technology, but the careful selection criteria for facility inhabitants. The databases contained detailed psychological and genetic profiles of potential survivors, ranked according to their perceived value to post-catastrophe civilization. Political leaders, military commanders, scientists, and engineers rated highest, while artists, philosophers, and religious leaders were relegated to lower priorities. The homeless, disabled, and elderly were marked as non-essential, with chilling bureaucratic efficiency. Sterling discovered that similar selection processes were occurring at the other international facilities. The Swiss installation, built into the Matterhorn, focused on preserving European cultural and scientific elites. The Siberian complex prioritized Russian leadership and technological capabilities. The Chinese facility in the Himalayas was designed around preserving their administrative and military hierarchies. Each project operated under the assumption that saving everyone was impossible, so resources should be concentrated on those deemed most capable of rebuilding civilization. During his inspection, Sterling encountered Dr. Angela Foster, the project's chief psychologist, who had been tasked with developing criteria for survivor selection. Her research had concluded that preserving existing power structures was less important than identifying individuals with the psychological resilience and collaborative skills necessary for species survival. We're making godlike decisions about who lives and who dies, Dr. Foster confided during a private conversation. But what if we're wrong about what humanity needs to survive? What if we're preserving the very attitudes and systems that created this crisis in the first place? Sterling began to realize that the survival facilities represented not just humanity's preservation, but its potential rebirth according to the values and priorities of those currently in power. Chapter 8. Global Geological Changes. Dr. Maria Santos had spent her career studying seismic activity patterns, but the data flooding into the International Seismological Center painted a picture of planetary instability unlike anything in recorded history. Earthquake frequency had increased by 400% over the past 18 months, with particular concentration along the Pacific Ring of Fire and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Volcanic activity was showing similar escalation, with dormant volcanoes awakening across multiple continents simultaneously. The official explanation attributed the increased activity to natural cycles and improved detection technology. But Dr. Santos recognized the patterns from theoretical models she had developed years earlier during graduate research on gravitational effects of large celestial bodies. The distribution and timing of seismic events exactly matched what would be expected from an approaching massive object with a strong gravitational field. Specifically, an object the size of Nibiru as described in the suppressed astronomical data. Dr. Santos had access to seismological data through her position at the European Seismological Commission, allowing her to analyze global patterns that individual monitoring stations couldn't detect. The data revealed that Earth's core was experiencing unusual magnetic fluctuations, while the planet's rotation was showing minute but measurable irregularities. These changes suggested that Earth's entire planetary system was being affected by external gravitational forces. Most concerning were the changes occurring in areas that should have been geologically stable. The Scandinavian peninsula was experiencing seismic activity for the first time in centuries. The African continent showed stress patterns, suggesting the beginning of continental drift acceleration. Even the stable interior regions of major continents were registering unusual deep earth tremors that typically preceded major geological restructuring. Dr. Santos attempted to present her findings at international conferences, but her presentations were consistently cancelled, or her data was declared preliminary and inconclusive. When she tried to publish her research, peer reviewers raised technical objections that seemed designed to indefinitely delay publication rather than improve the work's accuracy. Through encrypted communications with the underground scientist network, Dr. Santos learned that similar suppression was occurring with climatological and oceanographic research. Atmospheric scientists were documenting unusual jet stream patterns, while oceanographers were detecting changes in deep-sea currents that typically took millennia to develop. The evidence pointed to planetary systems preparing for massive disruption. "They're not just hiding the cause," Dr. Santos confided to the network. "They're preventing us from understanding how bad it's going to be." Chapter 9. The Disinformation Campaign. Marcus Webb had built his career as a public relations specialist by making inconvenient truths disappear. But the assignment handed to him by the Department of Information Security was unlike anything he had previously encountered. His task was to coordinate a global disinformation campaign designed to discredit any mention of Nibiru, while simultaneously preparing selected populations for what was euphemistically called geological transition events. Webb's team included specialists in social media manipulation, mainstream media influence, and academic reputation management. Their mission was threefold: suppress credible evidence of Nibiru's approach, promote alternative explanations for increasing geological instability, and subtly condition the public to accept massive population displacement as necessary responses to climate change and natural disasters. The operation required careful coordination across multiple governments and private organizations. Social media algorithms were adjusted to suppress content related to Planet X or Nibiru, while promoting debunking articles that made such theories appear ridiculous. Search engines were modified to direct queries about astronomical anomalies toward approved scientific explanations or entertainment content. Academic publications were pressured to reject papers that could contribute to public awareness of the approaching crisis. Webb discovered that the disinformation campaign was only one component of a larger program called Operation Continuity. While his team worked to prevent public panic, other groups were secretly relocating essential infrastructure, moving genetic seed banks to secure locations, and gradually transferring key personnel to survival facilities. The goal was to maintain social stability while secretly preparing for civilization's preservation. The ethical weight of the deception troubled Webb as he realized the scope of what was being hidden from humanity. The geological changes would begin gradually, but accelerate exponentially as Nibiru approached. Coastal cities would face unprecedented flooding, earthquake zones would experience catastrophic shaking, and volcanic regions would see massive eruptions. Yet the populations in these areas remained unaware and unprepared. Webb's moral crisis deepened when he received footage from reconnaissance satellites showing Nibiru's approach. The planet was clearly visible in infrared imaging, its gravitational effects already beginning to distort the outer solar system. The mathematical models predicted that when Nibiru reached its closest approach to Earth, the gravitational stress would trigger geological chaos that could reshape continents. "We're not preventing panic," Webb realized during a private moment reviewing the data. "We're ensuring that when the truth becomes undeniable, it will be too late for anyone outside the shelters to survive." Chapter 10. Resistance Forms. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had reached the point where maintaining her official position at JPL would require her to actively participate in the cover-up that was condemning billions to unprepared deaths. The choice between career security and moral responsibility was made easier by her late-night conversation with Keeper and the other Watchers, who had provided her with technology specifications that could potentially save millions of lives. Elena connected with Sarah Mitchell and Dr. Harrison through encrypted channels, forming the nucleus of what would become known as the Truth Network. Their plan was ambitious and dangerous. Simultaneously release the astronomical evidence, archaeological corroboration, and ancient technological solutions through multiple channels that couldn't be easily suppressed. The goal wasn't just to warn humanity about Nibiru's approach, but to provide actionable information for survival. The network expanded rapidly as word spread through the scientific underground. Dr. Santos contributed seismological evidence, while Colonel Sterling provided military intelligence about the survival facilities and selection criteria. Marcus Webb, overcome by the magnitude of the deception he was perpetrating, began secretly feeding information about the disinformation campaign to the resistance. Sarah Mitchell coordinated the media strategy, planning to release the story simultaneously through international news outlets, social media platforms, and academic channels. The multi-pronged approach was designed to overwhelm the suppression capabilities of the global information control system. They would have one chance to break through the censorship before the full weight of government power came down on them. Dr. Harrison worked to decode additional ancient technologies, while Elena collaborated with the Watchers to understand the practical implementation of protective systems. The ancient knowledge described methods for creating localized electromagnetic shields that could protect population centers from gravitational stress, geological stabilization techniques that could minimize earthquake damage, and even early warning systems that could predict the most dangerous areas during Nibiru's passage. The network faced constant pressure as members were threatened, arrested, or simply disappeared. But for each researcher who was silenced, 2 more came forward with additional evidence or technical expertise. The scientific community was slowly awakening to the magnitude of the crisis and the deception that surrounded it. As their release date approached, Elena received one final message from Keeper. The knowledge you are about to share represents your species' last chance for survival. Use it wisely, for you will not get another opportunity. Chapter 11. The Great Revelation. The coordinated release began at exactly 12 Salon GMT on March 15th, when Sarah Mitchell's exposé appeared simultaneously on news websites across 47 countries. Titled, The Hidden Planet: How World Governments Concealed Humanity's Greatest Threat, the article presented astronomical evidence, ancient corroborations, and leaked government documents that painted an irrefutable picture of the approaching catastrophe and its systematic cover-up. Within hours, the story had been shared millions of times across social media platforms, despite algorithmic suppression and active content removal efforts. Dr. Elena Rodriguez released her astronomical data through scientific channels, while Dr. Harrison published his ancient text translations on academic platforms. The sheer volume and coordination of releases overwhelmed the censorship apparatus that had successfully suppressed individual leaks for decades. The initial public reaction was a mixture of disbelief, terror, and rage. Governments worldwide were forced to respond to questions about secret survival facilities and population selection criteria. Religious leaders struggled to address the theological implications of ancient texts that predicted humanity's cyclical destruction and salvation. Stock markets plummeted as investors realized that traditional economic systems were meaningless in the face of planetary catastrophe. Colonel Sterling held a press conference in which he revealed the existence of Project Deep Shield and the international conspiracy to preserve only selected populations. His revelations about underground facilities and survival criteria sparked global protests as people demanded access to shelters that had been built with public resources, but reserved for government elites. The Watchers emerged from hiding to provide direct technological assistance to populations attempting to build protective systems. Their advanced knowledge allowed rapid construction of electromagnetic shield generators in major cities, though the technology required massive energy resources that most communities lacked. The ancient stabilization techniques proved more accessible, requiring primarily local materials and coordinated human effort. World governments faced an impossible situation. Maintaining the cover-up was no longer possible, but acknowledging the truth threatened to collapse civilization before Nibiru's arrival could do it naturally. Some nations chose full disclosure and began crash programs to prepare their populations. Others attempted to maintain control through martial law and continued suppression of information. The revelation marked the end of the old world order and the beginning of humanity's desperate race against time to prepare for the most significant challenge in species history. Chapter 12: Global Chaos and Preparation. The months following the Great Revelation saw humanity fracture along lines of preparation, denial, and desperation. Countries with the most advanced infrastructure began massive crash programs to build protective facilities and implement the ancient technologies provided by the Watchers. Nations with fewer resources faced impossible choices between attempting large-scale preparation and maintaining basic social order. The United States declared a national emergency and began constructing additional survival facilities while retrofitting existing underground structures for mass population. The selection criteria were expanded to include essential workers, families of military personnel, and random lottery winners, a compromise between practical necessity and democratic principles that satisfied no one completely. Major cities experienced mass exodus as people sought higher ground and geologically stable areas. European nations coordinated through the EU to establish regional survival zones, focusing resources on areas with the best natural protection from gravitational stress. The Swiss facilities were expanded to accommodate refugees from more vulnerable regions. Scandinavian countries, blessed with stable geology, became destination points for mass migration from southern Europe. China mobilized its entire industrial capacity to build protective systems for major population centers, while Russia opened its Siberian facilities to citizens willing to relocate to the remote regions. Both nations struggled with the logistics of protecting populations in the hundreds of millions, while maintaining the social organization necessary for such massive undertakings. Developing nations faced the greatest challenges, lacking both the resources for large-scale protective construction and the political stability to coordinate effective responses. International aid organizations attempted to provide assistance, but the scale of global need far exceeded available resources. Some regions descended into chaos as governments collapsed under the weight of impossible expectations. Religious communities worldwide grappled with theological questions raised by the ancient texts. Some saw Nibiru's approach as divine judgment requiring spiritual preparation, while others interpreted it as a test of human cooperation and ingenuity. The shared threat began breaking down barriers between different faiths as survival became more important than doctrinal differences. Scientific communities worked frantically to understand and implement the Watcher technologies while developing additional protective measures. The electromagnetic shield systems proved effective, but required enormous energy expenditures that strained power grids worldwide. The geological stabilization techniques showed promise but needed extensive coordination between communities to create effective protection networks. Chapter 13: The Ancient Alliance. As Nibiru became visible to the naked eye in the night sky, a reddish point of light that grew perceptibly larger each week, the Watchers revealed the full scope of their intervention in human history. Keeper and his colleagues established communication centers in major cities worldwide, providing direct technical assistance while sharing knowledge that redefined humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The Watchers explained that they represented survivors of a planetary catastrophe similar to what Earth was facing. Their homeworld had been visited by Nibiru during an earlier cycle, and they had barely survived the gravitational chaos that resulted. Over the millennia since their world's destruction, they had dedicated themselves to helping other species prepare for similar cosmic events. "Your planet is not the first to face this challenge," Keeper explained during a global broadcast from the United Nations headquarters. Nibiru follows a vast elliptical orbit that brings it through inhabited star systems periodically. We have helped 17 other worlds prepare for its passage. 12 survived with significant population preservation. 5 did not. The ancient technologies that Dr. Harrison had translated from Sumerian tablets were revealed to be instruction manuals left by the Watchers during previous visits to Earth. The electromagnetic shield generators were based on principles that could create protective bubbles around population centers, deflecting the worst gravitational effects during Nibiru's closest approach. The geological stabilization techniques involved synchronized human activity that could dampen seismic resonance patterns across continental areas. The Watchers also revealed that humanity's current technological development had been subtly guided to ensure the capability for implementing these protective measures. The development of global communications, advanced materials science and international cooperation were not purely human achievements, but had been influenced through careful intervention at crucial historical moments. However, the Watchers made clear that they could provide guidance and technology, but not direct salvation. Survival requires unity of purpose and cooperative effort on a scale your species has never achieved, Keeper warned. The technology we provide will only work if implemented with global coordination and shared sacrifice. The revelation that humanity was part of a larger cosmic community both comforted and terrified the global population. The knowledge that survival was possible provided hope, but the requirement for unprecedented international cooperation seemed almost as challenging as the approaching planetary catastrophe itself. Chapter 14. The countdown begins. With 8 months remaining until Nibiru's closest approach, astronomical observations confirmed the most dire predictions. The rogue planet was now clearly visible during daylight hours, appearing as a dark red disk roughly 1/4 the apparent size of the Moon. Its gravitational effects were causing increasingly severe geological disruptions, with major earthquakes occurring daily and volcanic activity reaching levels not seen in recorded history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been appointed as the international coordinator for astronomical monitoring, providing daily updates on Nibiru's approach and its effects on Earth's systems. The gravitational stress was following the predicted patterns from the ancient calculations, with the most severe effects still to come during the final months of approach. The protective technologies were being implemented with varying degrees of success across the globe. Major metropolitan areas with adequate power infrastructure had successfully activated electromagnetic shield systems, creating protective zones that could shelter millions of people. However, the energy requirements were enormous, forcing difficult decisions about resource allocation and population prioritization. Rural and developing regions relied more heavily on the geological stabilization techniques, which required coordinated human activity across vast areas. Communities learned to synchronize their daily activities according to seismic rhythm patterns, creating dampening effects that could reduce earthquake intensity. The techniques seemed almost mystical, but proved scientifically effective when properly implemented. International cooperation had reached unprecedented levels, as nations realized that regional protections were insufficient against a global catastrophe. Resource sharing, population exchange, and technological collaboration occurred on scales that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. The shared threat had begun creating a truly global civilization united by necessity. However, significant populations remained outside the protective systems due to resource limitations and political instability. Refugee camps housing hundreds of millions of people were established in geologically stable regions, but conditions were difficult and resources stretched beyond capacity. The moral weight of choosing who could be saved and who would be left vulnerable haunted decision-makers worldwide. Colonel Sterling coordinated military efforts to maintain order and assist in the massive population relocations required for survival preparation. His reports painted a picture of humanity at its best and worst. Incredible cooperation and sacrifice alongside desperate competition for limited resources. Chapter 15. The final preparations. With 3 months remaining until closest approach, Nibiru dominated the night sky as a looming red presence that cast eerie shadows across the landscape. Its gravitational effects had intensified beyond the most pessimistic predictions, causing the length of Earth's day to fluctuate and creating unusual tidal patterns that coastal populations struggled to adapt to. The electromagnetic shield systems protecting major cities required constant maintenance as the increasing gravitational stress pushed the technology to its limits. Dr. Santos reported that the geological stabilization networks were showing signs of resonance breakdown, requiring ever more precise coordination to maintain their protective effects. The Watchers worked tirelessly with human technicians to adjust the systems for the changing conditions. Sarah Mitchell documented the human stories emerging from the global preparation effort. Communities that had successfully implemented protective measures showed remarkable cooperation and social cohesion, as shared survival efforts broke down traditional barriers of class, race, and nationality. However, areas without adequate protection experienced social breakdown, as people either fled towards safer regions or descended into desperate competition for resources. The underground survival facilities were operating at capacity, housing not just the originally selected populations but also refugees, essential workers, and lottery winners. The expanded selection criteria had created unprecedented social mixing as political leaders, scientists, artists, and ordinary citizens shared confined spaces while waiting for the catastrophe to pass. Religious communities reported that the approaching crisis had led to either profound spiritual awakening or complete loss of faith. Many people found comfort in the ancient texts that had predicted humanity's survival through previous cosmic catastrophes, while others struggled with questions about divine justice and human worth. Interfaith cooperation had increased dramatically as survival became more important than theological differences. Dr. Harrison continued translating newly discovered ancient texts that provided additional guidance for the final phase of Nibiru's approach. The most disturbing revelations suggested that the closest approach would trigger not just geological chaos, but also electromagnetic disruptions that could destroy technological civilization. The protective systems themselves might fail at the moment they were most needed. The Watchers remained optimistic, but realistic about humanity's chances. "Your species has shown remarkable adaptability and cooperation," Keeper observed, "but the greatest test is yet to come." Chapter 16. The storm approaches. 2 weeks before Nibiru's closest approach, the rogue planet filled nearly 1/8 of the night sky, its red glow making darkness impossible anywhere on Earth. The gravitational effects had become so severe that the length of Earth's day was fluctuating by hours, while tidal forces created massive flooding along all coastlines. The electromagnetic shield systems protecting major cities were operating at maximum capacity, creating visible aurora effects that painted the sky in shifting colors. Dr. Elena Rodriguez coordinated the final astronomical observations from the hastily established Global Monitoring Center in Colorado. The data confirmed that Nibiru's closest approach would occur at a distance roughly equivalent to the orbit of the Moon, close enough to create gravitational chaos that would reshape Earth's surface, but far enough to avoid complete planetary destruction. The mathematical models predicted a survival rate of approximately 60% for populations within protected zones, and less than 10% for those outside. The geological monitoring stations reported seismic activity levels that broke all historical records. Major fault lines that had been stable for millennia were showing stress patterns indicating imminent catastrophic release. Volcanic activity was reaching super-eruption levels in multiple regions simultaneously. The ring of fire around the Pacific had become a continuous chain of active volcanoes, while new volcanic activity was emerging in areas that had never shown such potential. The Watchers made their final preparations to assist humanity through the crisis. Keeper revealed that their intervention during previous cosmic catastrophes had taught them that the most critical period lasted approximately 72 hours around closest approach. During this time, technological systems would be disrupted by electromagnetic effects, making most modern protective measures inoperable. Survival would depend on the ancient techniques and basic human cooperation. Underground survival facilities sealed their entrances and activated independent life support systems. The populations within these bunkers represented humanity's best hope for preserving civilization through the approaching chaos. However, the vast majority of Earth's population remained on the surface, protected only by hastily constructed shelters and the geological stabilization networks that might not survive the approaching gravitational storm. Chapter 17. The Closest Approach. The morning of Nibiru's closest approach dawned with an alien sky. The rogue planet hung overhead like a massive red eye, its surface features clearly visible to the naked eye. Ancient impact craters and mysterious geometric patterns covered its surface, suggesting a world that had experienced its own cosmic catastrophes. Earth's electromagnetic field fluctuated wildly as the two planetary magnetic systems interacted, creating aurora displays that painted the entire atmosphere in shifting curtains of colored light. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the approach from the hardened bunker beneath the Colorado facility. Her instruments detected gravitational waves rippling through space as the two massive bodies reached their closest point. Earth's rotation was slowing dramatically, while tidal forces created massive displacement of ocean water that inundated coastal regions worldwide. The electromagnetic shield systems protecting major cities flickered and failed one by one as the power grids collapsed under the strain. The geological stabilization networks that had protected rural populations for months finally succumbed to the overwhelming gravitational stress. Massive earthquakes struck simultaneously across multiple continents, their combined effect creating seismic waves that circumnavigated the globe repeatedly. The carefully coordinated human activities that had maintained the stabilization rhythm were disrupted as people sought immediate shelter from the chaos erupting around them. Volcanic eruptions exploded across the planet with unprecedented synchronicity. The Yellowstone caldera finally released its long-dormant pressure in an eruption that darkened skies across North America. Similar super-eruptions occurred in Indonesia, Italy, and New Zealand, filling the atmosphere with ash and particulates that would affect global climate for years to come. The ring of fire around the Pacific became a continuous wall of lava and ash. Through it all, the Watchers maintained their assistance to human populations, using technology that seemed immune to the electromagnetic disruptions affecting human systems. Keeper and his colleagues moved through the chaos, providing guidance and technical support to communities whose protective systems had failed. Their advanced knowledge allowed them to predict the most dangerous zones and guide survivors toward areas of relative safety. In the underground facilities, millions of people waited in darkness as the surface world convulsed above them. The carefully selected populations represented humanity's genetic and cultural diversity, but they could only listen helplessly as seismic monitors recorded the destruction of everything they had known. Colonel Sterling coordinated communications between facilities, providing updates on the global situation that painted an increasingly dire picture. Chapter 18. The Dark Hours. As Nibiru reached its absolute closest approach, Earth experienced what ancient texts called the time of screaming stones. The gravitational interaction between the two planets created tidal forces that literally reshaped continents. Mountain ranges crumbled while new peaks thrust upward from previously flat terrain. Ocean basins shifted, draining seas in some regions while creating new bodies of water in others. The electromagnetic effects reached their peak intensity, creating phenomena that bordered on the supernatural. Ball lightning danced across the landscape while aurora displays extended to ground level, creating curtains of colored light that could be touched but not grasped. Electronic devices failed completely, leaving human communities dependent on mechanical tools and direct communication for survival. Sarah Mitchell documented the chaos from a protected shelter in the Swiss Alps, using primitive recording equipment that could function despite the electromagnetic disruption. Her observations captured scenes of unprecedented destruction alongside remarkable human cooperation. Communities that had maintained their geological stabilization networks through the early phases of the crisis showed better survival rates, even as their protective systems failed during the peak gravitational stress. The ancient technologies provided by the Watchers proved their worth during these critical hours. Underground shelters built according to specifications from Sumerian tablets withstood gravitational forces that collapsed modern structures. Resonance dampening techniques taught by the ancient texts helped communities reduce the amplitude of seismic waves passing through their areas. Most importantly, the human cooperation fostered by implementing these techniques created social cohesion that prevented communities from fragmenting under extreme stress. Dr. Harrison found himself leading a group of refugees through the chaos, using knowledge from ancient texts to navigate safely through areas of maximum geological instability. The translations he had dismissed as mythology proved to contain practical survival information that was keeping thousands of people alive. The ancient writers had experienced similar catastrophes and encoded their hard-won survival knowledge in religious and mythological formats. The Watchers revealed that this was the most critical test of human civilization. Your species must prove that it can maintain cooperation and rationality under ultimate stress, Keeper explained during a brief communication with survivors. The societies that fragment into chaos during these hours will not successfully rebuild. Those that maintain unity will become the foundation for your world's recovery. Chapter 19. Survival and Adaptation. After 18 hours of maximum gravitational stress, Nibiru began to recede from its closest approach, and the immediate crisis started to subside. The rogue planet remained visible as a large red disk in the sky, but its gravitational effects gradually decreased as the distance increased. Earth's rotation began to stabilize, though at a new rate that made days approximately 26 hours long. The electromagnetic disruptions continued, but with decreasing intensity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez emerged from the Colorado bunker to find a transformed world. The landscape was dramatically altered, with new mountain ranges and valleys carved by the gravitational forces. The facility's monitoring equipment, protected by hardened shielding, showed that approximately 40% of Earth's surface had experienced significant geological restructuring. Coastlines had shifted by hundreds of miles in some areas, while new islands had emerged from the ocean floor. The electromagnetic shield systems that had protected major cities were completely non-functional, but the populations sheltered within had largely survived the immediate crisis. However, the infrastructure supporting modern civilization, power grids, communication networks, transportation systems, had been devastated by the combination of geological disruption and electromagnetic interference. Rebuilding would require starting from basic principles in many areas. Colonel Sterling coordinated the opening of underground survival facilities and the assessment of surface conditions. The carefully preserved populations began emerging to find a world that bore little resemblance to what they had left behind. Cities had been reduced to rubble, while rural areas showed massive changes in topography and water distribution. The challenge now was applying preserved knowledge and resources to rebuild civilization in the dramatically altered environment. The Watchers had prepared for this phase of the crisis as well. Their post-catastrophe protocols included guidance for re-establishing basic infrastructure, redistributing surviving populations to areas with the best recovery potential, and maintaining social organization during the difficult rebuilding period. They emphasized that the window for successful recovery was limited. Communities that failed to re-establish stable systems within 2 years typically descended into permanent chaos. Sarah Mitchell began documenting the human stories of survival and loss that emerged as communities took stock of the catastrophe. Families had been separated by continental-scale changes in geography. Entire cultures had been lost when their homelands were reshaped beyond recognition. Yet remarkable stories of heroism and cooperation also emerged, as strangers had worked together to preserve lives and knowledge through the darkest hours. The geological stabilization networks that had failed during peak stress proved easier to re-establish than the technological systems. Communities that had learned the ancient techniques quickly reactivated their protective measures, helping to minimize aftershocks and secondary geological disruptions. This gave them significant advantages in the early recovery period. Chapter 20. The New World Order. 6 months after Nibiru's passage, a new form of human civilization was emerging from the chaos. The traditional nation-state system had largely collapsed, replaced by regional communities organized around geological stability and resource availability. The underground survival facilities had become the nuclei for new settlements, as their preserved populations provided the knowledge and leadership necessary for rebuilding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself appointed as the director of the Global Recovery Coordination Center, established in one of the few major cities that had survived largely intact. Her role involved allocating preserved resources, coordinating population movements, and ensuring that vital knowledge was distributed to communities attempting to rebuild. The astronomical monitoring systems had been re-established, confirming that Nibiru was moving away from the inner solar system and would not return for another 3,600 years. The Watchers had begun preparing for their own departure from Earth, explaining that their intervention was only intended to help humanity through the immediate crisis. Your species must now prove that it can learn from this experience and prepare for future cosmic challenges, Keeper explained during one of his final public addresses. We will leave behind the knowledge you need, but the responsibility for implementing it belongs to humanity alone. The ancient technologies had proven their worth during the crisis and formed the foundation for rebuilding efforts. Communities worldwide were constructing permanent electromagnetic shield systems that could protect against future cosmic events. The geological stabilization techniques were being incorporated into urban planning, creating cities that could withstand seismic stress through coordinated community activity rather than just technological systems. Religious and philosophical movements had emerged around the experience of survival and cosmic perspective. Many communities developed belief systems that emphasized humanity's responsibility as planetary caretakers and the importance of preparing for future cosmic challenges. The knowledge that Earth was part of a larger community of worlds facing similar challenges had fundamentally altered human understanding of its place in the universe. The new civilization emerging from the catastrophe showed characteristics that differed significantly from the pre-Nibiru world. International cooperation had become the norm rather than the exception, as communities recognized their mutual dependence for survival. Resource allocation was based more on need and contribution to survival than on previous economic systems. Social hierarchies had been flattened as survival skills became more important than inherited status. Dr. Harrison had been appointed to head the new Global Archive project, tasked with preserving both the knowledge gained during the crisis and the ancient wisdom that had proven crucial for survival. His work involved not just translation and preservation, but also education programs to ensure that future generations would understand both the cyclical nature of cosmic catastrophes and the techniques necessary for survival. Chapter 21. Lessons from the Edge. 2 years after Nibiru's passage, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the newly established World Council, delivering a comprehensive report on humanity's survival and recovery. The statistics were sobering but hopeful. Approximately 60% of the global population had survived the immediate catastrophe, with survival rates highest in communities that had successfully implemented protective technologies and maintained social cooperation throughout the crisis. The recovery process had revealed important insights about human nature and social organization. Communities that had focused solely on technological solutions without building social cohesion had generally performed worse than those that had emphasized cooperation and mutual support. The ancient technologies worked best when implemented by societies that understood the principles of collective action and shared responsibility. Sarah Mitchell had been documenting these lessons in a comprehensive historical record that would serve as guidance for future generations. Her research revealed that the communities with the highest survival and recovery rates shared several characteristics: strong local leadership, effective communication systems, flexible resource allocation, and most importantly, a culture of cooperation that had been developed during the preparation period, rather than improvised during the crisis. The transformation of human civilization was evident in multiple areas. The new settlements were designed around principles of sustainability and resilience rather than pure economic efficiency. Energy systems relied heavily on renewable sources that could function independently, reducing vulnerability to large-scale infrastructure failures. Food production emphasized local systems and preserved genetic diversity to ensure survival through future environmental changes. Educational systems had been completely redesigned to emphasize practical survival skills alongside traditional academic subjects. Children learned basic geology, astronomy, and environmental science as core subjects, while also studying the ancient techniques for geological stabilization and community cooperation. The goal was to ensure that future generations would be better prepared for cosmic challenges than their predecessors had been. Colonel Sterling had transitioned from military coordination to civilian infrastructure development, applying lessons learned during the crisis to build transportation and communication networks that could function under extreme conditions. The new systems emphasized redundancy and local capability rather than centralized efficiency, creating resilience against both natural disasters and potential future cosmic events. The Watchers had completed their departure from Earth, but their legacy remained in the form of technological specifications and philosophical guidance that continued to influence human development. Their final message emphasized that humanity had passed its first major test as a cosmic civilization, but would face greater challenges as it expanded beyond Earth and encountered other species dealing with similar cosmic cycles. Chapter 22. The Watchers' Departure. The final gathering with the Watchers took place on the anniversary of Nibiru's closest approach, in the rebuilt city of Geneva, where the World Council had established its headquarters. Keeper and his colleagues had spent the past year transferring their remaining knowledge to human custodians, and ensuring that the technological systems they had provided could be maintained without their direct intervention. "Your species has demonstrated the capacity for both great wisdom and great folly," Keeper addressed the assembled leaders. "The wisdom showed in your cooperation during the crisis and your commitment to building a more resilient civilization. The folly appeared in the initial denial and suppression that made the catastrophe worse than necessary." The Watchers revealed that they had been monitoring human development for over 6,000 years, subtly influencing technological advancement to ensure that the tools necessary for cosmic survival would be available when needed. Their intervention during the Nibiru crisis represented the culmination of millennia of preparation, but also the beginning of humanity's independence as a cosmic civilization. Dr. Harrison received the final translations of ancient texts that had been preserved in Watcher archives. These documents contained not just survival techniques, but also philosophical guidance for civilizations attempting to maintain stability across cosmic timescales. The knowledge emphasized the importance of preserving wisdom across generations and maintaining readiness for challenges that might not arise for thousands of years. The technology transfers included specifications for advanced space-based monitoring systems that would provide centuries of advance warning for future cosmic events. However, the Watchers emphasized that technological capability was less important than social organization and cultural preparation. Technology fails, Keeper explained. Wisdom and cooperation endure. Elena Rodriguez was appointed as the first director of cosmic preparedness, responsible for maintaining the knowledge and systems necessary for surviving future cosmic challenges. Her mandate included not just technological preservation, but also cultural education to ensure that future generations would understand their responsibilities as planetary caretakers and cosmic citizens. The Watchers' departure was gradual rather than sudden, as they transferred final responsibilities and ensured that all critical systems were functioning properly under human management. Their ships became visible in Earth's orbit for several weeks before disappearing into deep space, heading toward other worlds that would face cosmic challenges in the future. As their presence faded from Earth, the Watchers left behind a transformed human civilization that had learned hard lessons about cosmic vulnerability and the importance of long-term thinking. The knowledge they had shared would influence human development for millennia to come, ensuring that future cosmic challenges would find humanity better prepared than it had been for Nibiru's return. Chapter 23: Legacy of Survival. 5 years after Nibiru's passage, the transformed Earth had settled into new patterns of stability and growth. The planet's altered geography had stabilized, creating new ecosystems and climate patterns that human communities were learning to adapt to. The longer 26-hour day cycle had been integrated into social and biological rhythms, while the modified magnetic field provided different but adequate protection from cosmic radiation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now in her 50s, had overseen the establishment of the Global Cosmic Monitoring Network, a system of space-based and ground-based observatories that maintained continuous surveillance of the solar system and beyond. The network's primary mission was ensuring that humanity would never again be caught unprepared by cosmic threats, but it had also led to remarkable discoveries about the universe and Earth's place within larger cosmic cycles. The monitoring system had detected evidence of other civilizations throughout the galaxy that had faced similar cosmic challenges. Radio signals and other electromagnetic signatures suggested that the universe contained numerous species that had survived cosmic catastrophes with the help of the Watchers or similar interventions. This knowledge provided both comfort and motivation for humanity's continued development as a cosmic civilization. Sarah Mitchell had completed her comprehensive historical documentation of the Nibiru crisis and recovery, creating an archive that served as both historical record and practical guide for future challenges. Her work emphasized the importance of maintaining social cohesion and international cooperation, even during periods of apparent stability, as the next cosmic threat might emerge with little warning. The educational systems established after the crisis had produced the first generation of cosmic citizens, young people who understood humanity's place in larger cosmic cycles and were trained in both technological and social techniques for species survival. These individuals were beginning to take leadership roles in communities worldwide, bringing perspectives shaped by cosmic awareness rather than purely terrestrial concerns. The ancient technologies provided by the Watchers had been refined and expanded by human innovation. Electromagnetic shield systems now protected all major population centers, while geological stabilization networks had been integrated into urban planning and agricultural systems. Most importantly, the social techniques for maintaining cooperation during crises had become embedded in cultural practices that were passed down through families and communities. Religious and philosophical movements that emerged after the crisis had matured into sophisticated belief systems that emphasized humanity's responsibilities as planetary stewards and cosmic citizens. These movements provided moral and ethical frameworks for making decisions that affected not just current populations, but future generations who would face their own cosmic challenges. The recovery had not been without costs and complications. Approximately 40% of the pre-crisis global population had not survived, and entire cultures and languages had been lost forever. The rebuilding process had required difficult decisions about resource allocation and population distribution that created new social tensions even as they solved survival challenges. As Elena prepared her final report as Director of Cosmic Preparedness before retiring to focus on training her successor, she reflected on the transformation that Nibiru's passage had brought to human civilization. The crisis had revealed both humanity's capacity for wisdom and cooperation, as well as its tendency toward denial and short-term thinking. The challenge for future generations would be maintaining the lessons learned during the crisis, while avoiding complacency during the long periods of stability between cosmic events. The legacy of Nibiru's return was ultimately not just survival but transformation, the evolution of human civilization from a purely terrestrial species to one that understood its place in cosmic cycles and accepted responsibility for long-term species preservation. The Watcher's intervention had provided the knowledge necessary for survival, but humanity had proven its capacity to learn, adapt, and grow from the experience. As Nibiru continued its journey through the outer solar system, now just a faint red star visible only through telescopes, it carried with it the satisfaction of having tested human civilization and found it capable of cosmic citizenship. The next passage, 3,600 years in the future, would find a species better prepared for cosmic challenges and more aware of its responsibilities to future generations and other civilizations facing similar tests. The greatest lesson of Nibiru's return was that survival required more than just technology or individual heroism. It demanded the wisdom to prepare for challenges that might not arrive for generations, the cooperation to work together across all barriers of nationality and ideology, and the moral commitment to preserve not just human life, but human wisdom for the cosmic community that Earth had joined through its trial by fire and celestial chaos.